State Park, partner with Redwood National State Parks in Humboldt County. This place is really special, and I'm really honored to be a part of this unique opportunity and this effort. And I'm going to introduce my friend, colleague, Aaron Gates, to inform you about our efforts here.
Thank you, Skip. Hello, California State Parks Facebook fans. My name is Aaron Gates, and I am an interpreter with California State Parks. We are so glad to have you joining us today. We will be talking about Redwood Rising, but before we start talking about Redwood Rising, we know it's summertime, and that means a great opportunity to come visit your state parks and your national parks. As you may have noticed, Skip and I are not on the same screen together. It's because we're practicing 6 feet of distance, and we want to remind all of you that we are so happy to have you back in our parks. We have missed you very much. What we also encourage you to please practice safe guidelines when you're visiting our state parks. If you want information on those safe guidelines, you can visit parks.ca.gov for our California state parks. It's where you also can find information about which parks are opening, which parks have campgrounds available. So we encourage you to go to that website to learn not only where you can visit, but how you can stay safe. One of the guidelines I do want to point out is that we ask that you bring face coverings with you, because if you are in any indoor space, or if you're in an outdoor public space where you can't maintain that 6 feet, we ask that you put a safe face covering on so you can keep yourselves safe, you can help keep visitors safe, other visitors safe, and you can help keep us park employees safe. We also ask that you bring any soap or hand sanitizer with you, just in case the facilities here at the parks you're going to might not have any available. But with all of that being said, we're happy to have you back in our parks. But like I mentioned, we're here to talk about Redwood Risings. This is a fantastic project that we are so excited to announce that it is officially launched. And before we can really start talking about that project, we really need to talk about why. Why do we need a project like Redwoods Rising? And with that, I'm actually going to invite Skip back on camera to help us uncover a little bit more of the history of the area and why we might need a project like Redwoods Rising. So Skip, come on back on.
Thank you, Aaron. So I have to do this really quick. There is immemorial history about redwood trees and the relationships that the Yurok people, whose Aboriginal territory we are now on, have. There are creation stories that predate humans about how strong and majestic and how powerful and spiritually sound the redwood tree is. Unfortunately, a lot of bad things happened to the native people not that long ago here. Contact happened, different worldviews came, and so there is now the necessity to have to protect and restore because of a different perspective and worldview that unfortunately eliminated a lot of native people and the redwood trees. So that's just a quick context of time immemorial. People have looked at these trees and been a spiritual part of them, and they've been a part of our lives. And I'm really excited that to be a part of this project where we're going to restore the redwood trees. Aaron, back to you.
Thank you, Skip. And as Skip mentioned, really what Redwoods Rising is all about is it's all about healing. And we understand that because, you know, over the last 3 months, all of us have been through a lot of difficulty. And we are experiencing our own form of healing. But these trees, this forest, these parks, they need our help. And that's what Redwoods Rising is all about. Please feel free to comment if you've ever had the opportunity to visit a redwood forest. Because these trees, and I'm going to kind of start to pan up so you can see a little bit, these trees have been bringing awe and inspiration to hundreds of thousands of visitors for a very long time. And perhaps some of those visitors have been you. And if not, hopefully you'll consider coming to visit because we would love to have you here. But when you look at a redwood forest, you'll notice some characteristics that make redwood forests very unique. One of those characteristics is you have trees of all different sizes and shapes. And what that allows is it allows little gaps in between the trees so sunlight can come in and provide this incredibly healthy forest floor. You see all these different plants down here. Plants are supporting homes for animals. So a redwood forest is in balance. A healthy old growth redwood forest is in balance. Everything has its place. Everything has its space. And that's great. But two-thirds of Redwood National and State Parks is actually considered second growth. And we're going to do you a few slides to help you understand really what Redwoods Rising is all about, because Redwoods Rising is going to help heal two-thirds of this park. So bear with me while I start a slideshow, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you all just gaze up into that beautiful forest canopy while I go ahead and screen share. So we are in Redwood National and State Parks. And we want to give you a better idea of where Redwood National and State Parks are. And as we mentioned, they are just south of the town of Crescent City on the very northern part of California, just south of the Oregon border. And it's actually made up of 3 state parks and Redwood National Park. So Redwood National and State Parks contain nearly half of the protected old growth coast redwood forests remaining on Earth. And as I just mentioned, we are in an old growth redwood forest right now, and you can see how balanced and how healthy this redwood forest is. Two-thirds of Redwood National and State Parks was logged prior to becoming part of the parks. Now, what that means is this area, two-thirds of the park is considered second growth forest. So Redwoods Rising will greatly accelerate redwood forest recovery within the parks and help protect the remaining old growth groves by actually restoring the second growth forest. So a second growth forest, what is it? It is part of a forest that was replanted or reseeded after logging. And as you can see in the photograph, a second growth forest looks very different from an old growth redwood forest. A second growth forest can be way too dense, meaning it can have up to 10 times the number of trees per acre as an old growth redwood forest. And what does that mean? It just means there's way too many trees for the space. The trees are competing for each other. They're competing for space. They're competing for light and for water and nutrients, and results in crowding. And it also results in the loss of very important understory vegetation. So you may notice the floor of the forest in the photo is very different from the floor of the forest that I showed you behind me. The solution for Redwoods Rising is restoration thinning, where it'll help to clear out the density of that forest. So it'll allow the trees to thrive, and it'll allow understory plants to grow, which will actually support the animals as well. Another component of Redwoods Rising is stream restoration. And stream restoration is very important because we are in 2 different watersheds in this area. And what you have with two-thirds of this park having previously been logged is you have a lot of failing and inaccessible roads that are dumping sediment into streams. And this photo that you're seeing is actually a photo of a road blowout. It's something that happened with one of these failing and inaccessible roads, and it dumped thousands and thousands of tons of sediment down into a creek, and it also took a whole bunch of trees with it. You may see a circle, a red circle. That's actually a person, to give you scale for how big of a blowout this was. Now, if you imagine the creek that was underneath all of these trees and sediment, and the coho salmon or perhaps the steelhead trout that were in that creek, you can imagine how destructive these failing and inaccessible roads have been to our streams and creeks. So Redwoods Rising, improving inaccessible roads and stream crossings. I'll give you a very brief overview of what the Redwoods Rising. I'd like to turn it over to Redwoods Superintendent Victor Blyatz, who is going to tell us a little bit more about this project. Victor, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Skip. Thank you, Aaron. Skip always likes to go to that why. If we look at the environment that York people and other indigenous tribes were experiencing up in this area, it looks different than what we experience today. A lot of areas have been impacted from logging practices. In those logging practices, there's a removal of old growth trees, and they were, utilized for different needs. There is a system that was put in place for removing that lumber from the area, and those are skid roads and haul roads. Those skid roads and haul roads also traverse streams, and we have in-stream impacts. So think of what those impacts look like to flora and fauna. And what we're trying to do is bring back those old growth characteristics. Some of these units in this area were established as early as 1923. We have some old growth forested areas that have never been touched by saw or logging. We also have other units that are highly impacted. For the Mill Creek watershed, we've got 25,000 acres that are all second growth. They're contiguous to some of our old growth stands, and we're looking to restore those. In restoring, we're doing thinning operations, we're doing road removal, landform restoration, as well as in-stream work. A lot of these things we can't do by ourselves. We operate these 4 units up here as Redwood National and State Parks. Been doing that since 1994. We realize we can't do it alone. We bring in partners, whether they're federal partners, state partners, NGOs, tribal partners, and individuals for these restoration efforts. A little bit of the why that we're doing this, impacted from extraction industry from lumber. So I think that I'm going to turn it back to Aaron, and I've got a couple of partners that are going to express more of the kind of the hows and the do's of Redwoods Rising.
Yes, thank you, Victor. And yes, this is a really unique project because it's a partnership. And so our next speaker is going to be Steve Metz, who is the Redwood National Park Superintendent. So he's actually the superintendent of Redwood National and State Parks, and he works for the National Park Service. Steve, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Skip and Victor, for a great introduction to this important project. As you've heard, we have a really big job ahead of us to restore this majestic landscape to its former glory. It's really, really hard to overstate how much work there is to be done across Redwood National and State Parks. Since the park was established, park staff in both California State Parks and the National Park Service have been doing a lot of restoration work in these degraded landscapes. And we've learned a whole bunch over the last few decades on how to do that. And a few of the things we've learned is we can't do this alone. And we really need to work across watersheds, regardless of boundary, whether it's national or state land or private land. We need to work across boundaries and with partners, because we all need to bring our own talents and resources to this. Realizing this, we looked and established this public-private partnership, Redwood Rising, to combine our talents and resources and really focus on this restoration work in these degraded forests and to restore this landscape. The exciting part about this project is that it really is going to help increase the scale by which we've worked. We worked on smaller scale to learn a lot, but we didn't ever have the resources to really scale up to meet the challenge of this large degraded landscape. So this project will allow us to meet that scale and also work at a pace, go much faster than we have in the past because of the additional resources that we can bring to bear that the National Park Service, California State Parks could not bring without our external partners. I had to tell you, this is the most exciting project I've been involved with in my entire career. The National Park Service set the model for how to protect special places over 100 years ago that's been adopted throughout the world. This project, I really do believe, is going to set the model for how to do large-scale restoration that's going to be adopted throughout the world. Thank you, and back to you, Erin.
Thank you, Steve. And I couldn't agree more. This is an incredibly exciting project. And as Steve mentioned, both private and public partners. So our last, but certainly not our least speaker, is Richard Campbell, the Director of Restoration for Save the Redwoods Lakes. Richard, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Heard from Erin, Skip, Victor, and Steve. This is a big job. Restoring the redwoods is a long journey, and luckily it's one that none of us have to walk alone. One incredible thing about Redwoods Rising is that as a partnership, it's one that really leverages the strengths of all of its members. The parks, the state and national parks have deep history and an incredible expertise that provide the knowledge and the skills that really are essential to our success. And as the NGO partner, having the league involved creates the opportunity for everybody else, for anyone who loves the redwoods, to be a part of the movement. We're pursuing Redwoods Rising for so many reasons. We're working to enhance and connect some of the greatest forests on Earth and the community of life that depend on them. Beyond that, we're going to be growing the forest of the future, a forest that's going to be resilient into an uncertain climate. We're going to be providing opportunities, providing conservation jobs, high-skilled, stable jobs for and training the next generation of people to work in restoration and conservation of our shared natural resources. And we're doing it for the climate benefits, both locally, providing refugia for the species that depend on cool and damp places, and globally, the redwood forest can store more carbon than basically any other natural system on Earth, and Redwoods Rising is going to allow the parks to unlock that potential. We're doing this for the fulfillment and the inspiration that the forests provide for people who visit and live among the redwoods to experience that peace and that beauty. I mean, in general, what we're trying to create is a forest that's going to be biologically rich, it's going to be carbon rich, and it's going to be socially and culturally rich. So you should join us. Visit the parks, visit the redwoods, visit, I can't go without saying this, visit redwoodsrising.org and learn more about our work and how you can help. If you're not in California, visit your own forests and learn what they need. I suppose if there's two things that I want everybody to know about Redwoods Rising is these. The first is that healing the redwoods is incredibly important for the planet and for ourselves. And the second is that healing the redwoods is possible, and we can do it. So please, I hope to see you in the redwoods someday. Thank you. Erin?
Thank you so much, Richard. And we will end with sharing more information. Time, I think we all just want to say thank you so much for tuning in today to learn about this incredible project that is restoring the old growth redwood forest of the future, because these are your parks, and together we can heal these parks. So thank you very much for joining. I'm going to get off the screen so Skip can come in and say goodbye, and then I will screen share where you can find out a little bit more information to visit, to learn more, and maybe find out how you can be involved. So come on in, Skip. All right, thank you very much, everybody.